Welcome to This Week in High School Sports. I'm Teresa Whipple, and hi, Steve. We're into winter sports.
We are. It's December's here already.
I
Can
know.
you believe it?
And Christmas will be here before we know it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
But we're not talking about that yet. We're talking about Red Onion Burgers, and thanks again to Sean Richards for your support. And they had a very successful fundraiser for their Shop with a Cop event on Friday night, is my understanding. So congratulations to Sean and Lorraine Richards for that.
Very nice. I noticed Sean was posting some pictures of the Intimidator Challenge the other day, so folks are still doing that. A lot of food to consume within a certain period of time, and if you do it, your meal's free. So if you have any big eaters out there and you want to get over to Red Onion Burgers, try the Intimidator Challenge.
Very good. Well, without further ado, let's talk about basketball.
Yeah, we're there already. It was week number 1 of the basketball season. We'll kind of go over briefly all of our teams. Mount Lake Terrace, we'll start off with the boys. A couple of tough losses. They went to West Seattle to start their season, lost to a very good Wildcats team, turned around and lost to Kamiak in overtime. Kamiak hit a three-pointer well behind the three-point line, I might add, at the buzzer to send it into overtime, and then Terrace lost. However, they did end up getting a victory over Lynnwood on Saturday night, so Mount Lake Terrace gets their first victory of the year. Lynnwood, we should mention them real quick, a team that only won 4 games last year. They defeated Highline earlier this week, 80-64. Significance of that, this is a Lynnwood team that only scored over 60 points 4 times out of 20 last year, so they're already showing off a little more offense. They then turned around and lost a double overtime game to Mariner on Friday night. So 2 overtimes on Friday night, and then they have to turn around less than 24 hours later to play Mount Lake Terrace, the game we just kind of teased a minute ago. They were ahead of Mount Lake Terrace going into the fourth quarter by 4 points, and then lost that one down the stretch. So Lynnwood already playing much better than they have been in the past. Edmonds-Woodway, a couple of tough losses to start their season, non-conference games. And Meadowdale, a team that is still trying to recoup from the fact that they're still missing some players from the football season that just ended. So they don't have a full squad yet until they get their 10 practices in, which is mandatory. They lost an overtime game to Jackson on Friday night, a very good Jackson team. So the fact that they even competed with them is pretty impressive. And then they turned around on Saturday night and lost to Cedar Crest. So boys not off to what you'd call a great start necessarily, but all 4 of the teams showing some promise here, and I think it's going to be fun to see how they do throughout the season. And then when we look to the girls' side of things, Edmonds-Woodway, a 64-40 victory over Jackson. I think they're pretty happy with that. And then they lost to a Lake Stevens team, which is one of the favorites to win the 4A league this year. Meadowdale, a couple of tight losses to Everett and Mariner, so we'll see how they do later on this year. Again, non-conference games early on. Mount Lake Terrace, a team that only won 2 games last year, almost picked up 2 victories this week. They lost to Oak Harbor by a very small margin, a game that they were leading by, I think, 6 or 7 points in the third quarter. And then they turned around and beat Squalicum, I think 2 nights later, up in Squalicum. So Mount Lake Terrace picking up 1 victory already. We'll see how they do moving forward. And then the Lynnwood Royals, the team that we've gotten to know very well over the last few years. Team that won the state championship 2 years ago, placed 3rd last year. Royals, a little bit tougher start this year. They've lost their first 2 games, which were both top-tier teams, bigger schools, non-conference games. So they picked up 2 losses there, but then they defeated Mount Lake Terrace 67-22 on Saturday night. The Lynnwood Royals are picked to win the 3A division again this year, so we're still thinking they're going to be a very promising team. A lot of returners back. They lose 2 Division I players in Michaela Pivick and Jordan Edwards.
Yeah,
huge losses there, but those are the only 2 players they lost on the entire team. So mostly returning faces, a new coach this year, and rather than trying to break it all down right here at this table right now with you, we decided to bring in 2 of the teammates from the Royals team who also happen to be sisters.
Oh, more siblings.
More siblings, right? Great. So Kaprice and Nakia Boston were in here earlier, and here's the conversation we had with them as they told us all about what we can expect from the Royals this year. The Lynnwood Royals girls basketball team picked up their first victory of the season this weekend, 67-22 win over Mount Lake Terrace. And with us right now, 2 members from that team, 2 sisters from that team, Kaprice Boston, who is a senior, and Nakia Boston, who is a freshman. Ladies, first of all, congratulations on the victory.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Kaprice, I'm going to start off with you because you're the senior here. You've been on this Lynnwood team now for 4 years. A Lynnwood team that didn't lose very much your first 3 years.
Yes.
A little bit different team this year. I know you lose Michaela Pivick, you lose Jordan Edwards, you lose your first 2 games of the season, non-conference against very tough opponents. What was that like for you guys, knowing that you've kind of got this winning mentality in your heads?
I'm not going to lie, it was a little hard at first. We're not used to losing. I mean, it sucks to lose, but everybody does it. But over the last 3 years, I've only lost maybe 5 games and no more than, one a season, I believe. Mm-hmm. And, it was hard, but we have to learn somehow. We have a new coach, so everything's different. We're trying to try out new lineups and everything. So it was hard, but, we got through it, and it's a new season. What more could I ask for? We're just learning.
Now, I was talking to Coach Brent Hudson after the game, and he mentioned that in some ways it may not have been such a bad thing to get a couple losses early, because perhaps there's pressure on a team knowing that they're undefeated midway through a season or late in a season to keep that perfect record going. Maybe it almost takes precedent over other things. In some ways, are you feeling like there's a weight that's been lifted off your shoulders early this year, knowing that there's a couple losses?
Yeah, it's way more nerve-wracking going into, last year we were undefeated until state, and there's so much pressure going in knowing that, everybody wants to beat you. But now that we've kind of lost, we kind of, are taking it a little slower and realizing that it's okay to lose.
Sure. Now, Nakia, different for you this year. You're a freshman. Your sister's played varsity the last 3 years, so I'm assuming you've been to quite a few Royals basketball games. A little bit unusual for you, or what's the feeling like now knowing that you're actually wearing the uniform?
It's a lot different. Usually when I watch the game, it's easier to see everything that's going on, but now when you play, it's like you have to focus on little things each time instead of seeing the whole thing together. Mm-hmm.
Now, playing as sisters, obviously 3 years apart, I would assume this is the first time you've ever played together on the same team, or it's been a long time if you haven't. Kaprice, what's it like for you looking over on the court and seeing the little sister out there?
It's almost unreal. We haven't had too many experiences with that, but it's it shocked me yesterday when she came in. I was like, wait, that's my sister right there. I didn't know what to do. It was awesome. It's a great feeling playing with her, especially in my last season.
And now, Nakia, for you, you've been watching Big Sister play for all these years. When you're on the court and she's out there with you, is it? I've got to think in some ways it maybe is a little comforting for you, knowing that you already know she's got your back, right? So kind of fun for you playing with her, or is it more pressure for you?
It's both. It's fun because it's my last year with her, and I know how great of a player she is, and she can feed it to me or I can feed it to her, and it just looks great. But the pressure's definitely there because she's older, and she's better at this stage. But it's fun because she teaches me on the court, so it's a comforting feeling to have her there for me.
Sure. Now, and we should mention there's a third Boston at the school. Brother Jerry is there as well. He's a sophomore. Kind of doing some swing right now between JV and varsity on the boys team. Games of horse. Who I hear Jerry's a really good shooter. Who's winning horse right now, Kaprice?
Jerry and Nakia a majority of the time. Our games of horse go from 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. Everybody's making everything. It's so difficult, but it's a lot of fun. Jerry's a great shooter. She's a great shooter.
And Nakia, we should mention, and Kaprice and I talked about this a little bit a couple of months ago when you were in here from the volleyball team. We mentioned at the time Dad Jerry played at Garfield and then played college basketball at
Oregon Institute of Technology.
That's right. And then obviously Uncle Bryant also played at the University of Washington, and Uncle Jason Hamilton played at the University of Washington. Are there some pretty competitive games when you guys get together at family picnics? Nakia, what's the family situation like there?
It's hard. All of them, the whole Boston era is good shooters, and the games last so long and they're so competitive, but it always breaks down to my dad and his brothers. Always them two that are the last ones that go.
All right. Well, you guys got some time still too, so we'll see if we can get a few more wins. Speaking of Dad, Mom and Dad, I saw them at your game last night. Fortunately, for the Mount Lake Terrace matchup, the boys and the girls played back to back. But there's going to be a lot of Friday nights this year when Jerry's playing in one gym, the two of you are playing in another. Where are Mom and Dad going to be on those nights?
They're going to split it up. They'll be in the gym most definitely, but sometimes Dad will be at our games and Mom will be at Jerry's, and then they'll switch it up the next weekend. So.
And Nakia, is that you always get one of your parents at the games usually? Is that kind of fun for you guys?
Yeah, it's good to know that one of them's there at least, and then the next game, the other one will be there.
Sure. Well, let's look at the team a little bit closer now. We talked about your win over Mount Lake Terrace this weekend, your first victory. A new coach this year. You had Everett Edwards the last few years, and now he left, and now Brent Hudson has taken his place. A little bit of a contrast here. You go from having a Seattle Police Department detective as your coach to a pastor now as your coach. Different styles and how they handle it. Kaprice, I'll ask you, since Nakia never got to play for Coach Edwards, but what's been the difference in making this transition?
Everett was a lot more intense. I know that Brent is intense, but I feel like he's kind of holding back a little bit. He's definitely come out a little bit more, but it's It's different. It's different, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I like to learn new coaching styles and everything. They're very similar, but Everett was just more intense.
Sure. And now let's look at the team a little bit here. You've got five seniors now with Maddie Morgan joining the team this year, but there's four of you that have played all along. It's you, Taylor Fahey, Kelsey Rogers, Riley Walsh. Give me a little bit of a rundown as to what it's like having these girls all as seniors this year and what that means.
We're very close, and our chemistry is unreal. We're very competitive, and we're defensive minded, which defense wins games. If you don't have a good defense, you can't stop the other team from scoring. We're a very close group. It's fun to play with them. And
then Nakia, I'll let if you maybe speak a little bit too. You don't have any sophomores on this team, but you've got a handful of juniors, and you're one of two freshmen on the team. Amaya Kirkman also playing on there. Tell me a little bit about the juniors and the freshmen.
The juniors help us learn a lot, and so do the seniors. And Amaya helps me learn. During practice and during games, we just always learn from each other. It's not like the freshmen are going over the juniors and the juniors are going over us. We're all just teaching each other. Mm-hmm.
So when you've got Kia Crawford and Abby Douglas, Valerie Bell, who starts, when you got them playing against some of these seniors too, you get some pretty competitive ball, I would think, in practice too, right?
Most definitely.
No, without a doubt. And speaking of siblings that we talked about earlier, we've got another set of siblings on this team. Riley and Rachel Walsh was talking to their mom a little bit after the Mount Lake Terrace game, and she mentioned that it might be kind of fun at some point to see two Bostons and two Walshes on the court at the same time. Would that be a fun experience for you guys?
Oh my gosh, yes. I would love that so much.
Coach Hudson, if you're watching, maybe we can make that happen at some point this year. Are the Walshes and the Bostons, do you guys have any fun competitions against each other, kind of sisters versus sisters in shooting contests or anything like that?
Yeah, we played 2-on-2 a while ago. It was very competitive and goofy at the same time. I think it was one of the best times I've ever had playing 2-on-2 because Riley and Rachel are two of the sweetest girls I know, and they're very goofy, so it just made it a lot of fun.
So it's a rivalry, but it's a fun rivalry. You guys have a good time with that. Okay, well, perfect. And we should mention, too, a couple of games coming up this week. You're at Mariner on Monday, Glacier Peak on Wednesday. That's no longer a conference game. Glacier Peak has moved up to 4A this year, but, boy, they look really tough right now. I think a lot of folks are picking them to win the 4A in Wesco. The coaches poll has picked Lynnwood to win the 3A. Kaprice, you know this Glacier Peak team pretty well. What would it mean for you to get a victory over them on Wednesday at Lynnwood?
It would mean the world to me, but they're a very good team, and we've lost some key players, and they have a very strong team coming back. But it's going to be a good game. I really think that the game could go either way, and whichever team wants it more, the other team will get it.
Sure, and I should ask you about that number one ranking right now, too, or at least being picked number one. And Nakia, this is all kind of new to you, but as far as putting pressure on a team, does it put more on you, knowing that you still have that target on your back a little bit and that people are still kind of gunning for Lynnwood on any given night?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure. Everybody wants to beat Lynnwood. It's been like that for a while, but we have to live up to that. We have to go out and we have to prove to everyone that this is why we're this good. So.
How's that for you, Nakia? Do you enjoy having that pressure?
Yeah, I like to use pressure to motivate me, saying that it's like my goal to show them that I can do what they expect me to do.
Sure. So far so good. Again, 2 losses early in the season, non-conference, very tough teams, but this is a team that's gelling right now and getting much better. We're going to see how much better this week. Kaprice Boston, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nakia Boston, thank you.
Thank you.
Continue to follow the Bostons as well as the Lynnwood Royals all season long.
Well, it's a good problem to have, to be worried about some losses when you only lost 3 games in the past 3 years.
Yeah, I think those Royals fans have gotten a little spoiled over time. But I mean, the fact that you lose 2 Division I players and you're still picked to win a conference that has 13 teams in it, the Royals still looking very good, and Kaprice and Nakia are 2 big reasons why that is.
Yeah, always good to have the siblings in. We enjoy that. Okay.
And then we've got some big games coming up in basketball. If folks want to get out and watch these teams play, we'll mention a few of the home games coming up this week for all of the Edmonds School District teams. Start off with the boys. If you like Cedar Crest High School, which is located over in Duval, they're going to make a couple of trips over to Edmonds School District this week. Mount Lake Terrace will host them on Wednesday night, a game we will broadcast on SoundLiveSportsNetwork.com. And then they will be going to Lynnwood on Saturday night to play the Royals. So you can watch both Mount Lake Terrace and Lynnwood against Cedar Crest this week. And then we've got the rubber chicken matchup. That is Edmonds-Woodway.
Always a favorite.
Always a favorite. Edmonds-Woodway at Meadowdale, and that's on Friday night this week. We should mention it's boys and girls back-to-back. So if folks want to see 4 of our teams there at the same gym, same night, head on over to Meadowdale on Friday night and watch those 2 match up. And then when we look on the girls' side of things, we already mentioned Meadowdale there. They've got a couple other home games this week. Linden Christian on Monday, Squalicum on Wednesday. Two games that could be winnable. Linden Christian is usually a very tough team. They're a smaller school, but always have very good teams. Squalicum has already lost to Mount Lake Terrace, so perhaps a nice opportunity for Meadowdale to get in the win column there that night. Edmonds-Woodway is going to host Kings on Wednesday. It's a Kings team that won the state championship 2 years ago, so that's a very stiff opponent and always a good team there. Kings team that's coached by Dan Taylor, who teaches at Meadowdale, so always a fun little rivalry
and he
there.
used to coach at Meadowdale too, right?
And he's coached football at Meadowdale in the past too. So Dan, I think, knows those girls pretty well.
Yeah.
Lynnwood, as we just heard from the Boston sisters, Glacier Peak on Wednesday night. That's going to be the game of the week right there. Two teams that are picked to win their conference based on coaches' polls. So I think if there's only one game you can get to this week, Lynnwood versus Glacier Peak at Lynnwood High School Wednesday night. Not a bad matchup. And then Tuesday, Mount Lake Terrace plays host to Seaholm. They both have a common opponent already. Mount Lake Terrace defeating Squalicum, Seaholm losing to them. So in theory, could be a nice chance for the Hawks to get their second win of the year.
Okay, well, and we're ready to move on to wrestling now?
We've got wrestling too. It is that time of year. And rather than, again, trying to just talk about it, you and I, why not bring in an expert, right? And we have a great one around here. Mike Cooper, who's been announcing wrestling over at Edmonds-Woodway since 1989, joined us in studio to get us caught up on what we can expect from all four of the Edmonds School District schools this year in wrestling. Here's that conversation with Mike. It's winter sports season, and that means it's wrestling season. And with us right now, Mike Cooper, who has been the announcer over at Edmonds-Woodway since 1989. That takes you all the way back to Edmonds High School, too, for that matter, Mike.
The last year Edmonds was open, I was their announcer.
And he's been with Edmonds-Woodway ever since. Mike, let's get right into the wrestling season. Big one this weekend, the Edmonds Invitational. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the Edmonds Invitational, which is the 46th year that it's been hosted at Edmonds and subsequently Edmonds-Woodway High School, always one of the top tournaments of the year for schools. It's early in the season, and this year, 20 teams. 5 of the top teams in the state were there. 4 out of the top 5 3A teams, and then one of the top 5 4A teams was at that tournament. 6 returning state champions and 37 returning state placers at that tournament. Edmonds-Woodway and Meadowdale were there. Meadowdale had a champion, Liam Ball. Edmonds-Woodway had nobody in the finals, which is rare for them, but they had a lot of third places. So kids got knocked out in the quarterfinals and semifinals. But it was a very, very tough tournament, very competitive and fun to watch.
And speaking of Edmonds-Woodway, a team that did very well at state last year, even won individual state championship. Tell me a little bit about what the Warriors look like coming back this year.
Well, I think they look pretty good. They've got 4 wrestlers that went to state last year. 2 of those were placers. Mitchell Martinez, the little guy, it wasn't at the Edmonds Invite. Students were taking SATs this weekend, so some of the seniors were kind of busy. Mitchell Martinez plays 5th in state last year. He'll be in there at either 106 or 113. Coming back, has an excellent chance of placing in state again. Abduli Jata, 182-pounder now, grown a little bit since last season, was 8th in state at I think 160 or 170 last year. Could get down before tournament time to that weight. Abduli's got a good chance of placing maybe top 4 in state. Then Salou Fateh, one of the younger, the middle of the 3 Fateh brothers, went to state last year, did not place. And Anthony Lindemood, a senior who went to state last year and didn't place, all back and all have a really good chance of placing in state last year. Then they have Jin Sung Lee, who's their 126-pound wrestler. Jin Sung went to state his sophomore year, and last year, first match of the season against Lynnwood, fractured his wrist and missed the entire season. So he's back and stronger than ever, and ready to go.
Yeah, a few of those guys are football players, so we certainly know how tough they are. We saw them out on the gridiron this fall. Be fun to see how they do this year. Meadowdale, you mentioned Liam Ball already. We know he's a solid wrestler. Tell me a little bit about
Liam. Liam's been around a long time, and in fact, I've watched Liam wrestle since he was a little kid, wrestling in the Wrestling Rhinos, and he's a fun wrestler to watch. This year, it looks really strong. Placed 7th or 8th in state last year. Yesterday, we mentioned the Edmonds Invitational Tournament. Liam won that tournament, and he was also voted outstanding wrestler
For the entire
for the
tournament?
entire
Oh,
tournament.
wow, okay.
And to get to the championship, he defeated a state champion from last year's MAC Classic. He defeated a 4th place finisher and an 8th place finisher. So to get to the championship, he defeated 3 state placers from last year at MAC Classic. The exciting match of that tournament was against Abduli Jata in the quarterfinals. That's how tough the tournament was. He wrestled Jata in the quarterfinals, and 4-4 towards the end of the match, and Liam got a late takedown and won that match 6-4. It's very, very exciting. I think you're going to see those two guys wrestle each other more during the season, and they're going to be fun to
I
watch.
think we'll enjoy that.
Meadowdale's also got Jin-Ho Lee, who's a small, young wrestler, lightweight, who did really well in the Edmonds Invitational. He went to regionals last year, looks pretty good. And then a wrestler I didn't see much of last year, but he was exciting to watch at the Edmonds Invite, was Jesus Hernandez Baez, 170-pounder. So Meadowdale's got some good wrestlers, and Coach Boardman is, always puts together a scrappy team, and they're always very competitive.
Sure. Now, Mount Lake Terrace, what are they looking like right now?
Well, Mount Lake Terrace I haven't seen much of yet this year, but from what they had last year, Pavel Olaforowski, which is always a fun name to pronounce. Pavel's, coming back at probably 160 or so. He's going to be, I think, pretty good shot. He went to regionals last year, got a good chance of going to regionals or state again this year. And Rain Mack, which is the younger of the members of the Mack family.
Chaplain, right?
Chaplain Mack's younger brother. And Rain had a good season last year, didn't go to state, but I think he puts together a good season this year. He'll do okay for Mount Lake Terrace.
Okay. And then Lynnwood.
Probably Lynnwood's top returner is Luel Wolde, and he's a 126-pounder. He went to state last year. He's ranked in the top 10 in his weight preseason this year, and I think that's probably one of Lynnwood's top people. Lynnwood doesn't have a lot of kids turning out, and so they're kind of putting together. From what I saw in their early dual meets, they still have a lot of forfeits in their lineup. But Lynnwood's, again, well coached and always scrappy.
And we should mention Luel also was in studio here just not too long ago as a cross-country runner. He participated in state there, too. So cross-country and wrestling, you don't always see those two worlds collide, but good for him if he's able to succeed in both. Looking ahead a little bit as we go into the season, Edmonds-Woodway, always a team, it seems like Coach Alfie always putting a lot of tough competition on his schedule, always willing to take his wrestlers just about anywhere. Tell me a little bit about what they've got coming up in December.
Well, since Coach Alfie took over the team, I tell people Edmonds-Woodway doesn't really rebuild; they reload. With all these returners coming, and a lot of their strength, I think, is really based on the numbers of wrestlers they have turning out, for one thing. So it's very, very competitive in the practice room. But also the numbers of tournaments they go to, the numbers of matches that they actually get leading up to regionals and state. When you wrestle on dual meet, doesn't really get you ready for the tournament season. So to go to tournaments, you really are getting ready for the tournament season. So they got the always tough Rose City tournament in Portland coming up, I think, this weekend. That's a very competitive tournament where they'll wrestle some of the top teams in Washington and Oregon will be there. And then the PAC.
The Pacific Coast Tournament.
Pacific Coast Tournament's coming up towards the end of the month over the holidays. Another tournament where they draw teams from Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. And once in a while, some of the Nevada or Idaho schools will show up. Again, competitive. They'll be wrestling top teams from their own state and from other states, which really gets them ready for the tournament season.
Sure. So a lot of opportunities for Edmonds-Woodway to wrestle into the future. Should mention a few different things for the other three schools. Meadowdale at home on Tuesday against Kamiak, so they're going up against a 4A school. And then if you want to see Mount Lake Terrace and Lynnwood, they'll be participating in the same gym over at Mount Lake Terrace on Thursday in a dual meet with Monroe and Cascade, two more 4A schools. So these 3A schools, and Mount Lake Terrace's case, a 2A school, going up against some of the bigger competition to start the season and to see what they're made out of. That should be fun.
Right. It's going to be an interesting season. I think in the 3A side,